Dear brothers and sisters, Namo Buddhaya, Jai Bhim. I've celebrated Dr. Babasahe Ambedkar Jayanti for 42 years, but never like this. I'm sure this is the same for all of us. We're staring dukkha in the face as never before. You've all seen pictures of the migrant workers in India and their terrible plight. But when the virus starts to hit the slums in India, there could be a human catastrophe on a scale we just cannot imagine. Water is usually scarce, physical distancing impossible, and most people operate on daily wages. Much of that work is not possible at present, and people have no financial reserves. They don't have a chance. No one knows how long the virus is going to affect us, or how bad it will get. Could it start to subside after 3 months like in Wuhan, or will it go on longer? Will the hot Indian summer make a difference? If it does, is it likely to resurge in the winter? How many of us will suffer personal tragedies? No one knows the answer to any of these questions. This is the uncertainty we're all living in now. And this cripples our minds with anxiety and fear. We also hear that we're in the worst recession for 90 years since the Great Depression. How will that impact us? We're all hoping for the best, but we have to be realistic and we have to prepare for the worst. My main project in recent years has been developing Nagaloka at Nagpur, a training center for young people in Buddhism and Dr. Ambedkar thought. A few weeks ago, the students were all sent home. Since then, we've had no visitors and no pilgrims. They're not allowed. All the work our ex-students have been doing, teaching the Dhamma in towns and villages throughout India, that's had to stop. We don't know what the future is. The recession may make things even worse. Despite this, there's a remarkable spirit of determination and cooperation among all our various teams. People are raising funds and preparing food for people in the slums and people and migrant workers. Our ex-students from all over India are forming teams and WhatsApp groups and cooperating and doing exemplary work. You can see this on our website, nagaloka.org. So they've been empowered by Dr. Babasahe Ambedkar and Buddhist practice. These difficulties have brought out the best in them. And it's with this attitude, this spirit, that I have no doubt that whatever difficulties we face, in the end, we'll find a way forward. But it's not just our students. I've seen the same spirit amongst Ambedkarites everywhere. So many are coming forward in a spirit of generosity and cooperation. And this is especially important because we're entering a major turning point in history. The world will change socially, politically, and economically. Noam Chomsky says that the options range from the installation of highly authoritarian, brutal states to the radical reconstruction of society on more humane terms, concerned with human needs instead of private profit. India's politics might seem chaotic and under threat, but it has a very resilient constitution, one that was framed by Dr. Babasahe Ambedkar. His contribution to India is becoming increasingly appreciated, and his thought can play a significant role in the India and the world that emerge after this calamity. And it's here that his followers have a special responsibility. The more they exemplify Babasaheb's teachings, the more others will appreciate Babasaheb's great contribution. And that's what is happening now. The constitution was underpinned by Babasaheb's understanding of social democracy, the essence of which is liberty, equality, and fraternity. Babasaheb did not promote Buddhism through the constitution, but we all know that he found the real meaning of these values in the Buddha's teachings. So I want to say a very few words about these three as Buddhist values. First of all, liberty. Babasaheb wrote passionately on freedom, in which way liberation. He said, and I quote, "Man should be free to act according to his free will, to make the maximum use of the abilities he possesses. A person whose mind is not free, though he is not in chains, is a slave. Though he is alive, is dead. Freedom of mind is a proof of one's existence. I call him free who, with consciousness awake, realizes his rights, responsibilities, and duties. He who is not a slave of circumstances, who is not a slave of usage, customs, and traditions, or of the teachings because they're brought down from the ancestors, one whose flame of reason is not extinguished. I call him free who is the master of his own life." Now, this was written or spoken before he converted to Buddhism, but at that time it was very clear that he was very familiar with the Buddhist teachings. Freedom of mind in Buddhism is exactly this. One can say more. It means freedom from fear, freedom from anxiety, freedom from hatred, freedom from greed, freedom from confusion, freedom from anything that limits us as human beings. I think I've said enough to say that it's enough to say that the Buddhist teaching is all aimed at helping us to develop this freedom of mind. Equality. The Buddha spoke much about equality. Babasaheb spoke much about equality in Buddhism. I'm just going to make one brief point. The central chapter in the Buddha and his Dhamma on Saddhamma, Babasaheb says, has two functions. The first function of Saddhamma is to develop or purify the mind. The second is to create a better world. And these two have to go together, according to Babasaheb. You can't have one without the other. So we must cultivate prajna, shila, karuna, maitri. In this way, we make ourselves more positive, confident, fearless. We develop more understanding. We become better as human beings. But this is not enough. These practices, according to Babasaheb, must manifest in breaking down barriers between people, and especially, he says, in establishing equality. And he says this is the real test of our Dhamma practice, whether or not we promote, we help to establish equality. Lastly, fraternity. Just one very brief but significant point. Babasaheb in the Riddles of Hinduism said, and I quote, "What sustains equality and liberty is fellow feeling, what the French revolutionist called fraternity. The word fraternity is not an adequate expression. The proper term is what the Buddha called maitri. Fraternity is the root of democracy." I don't need to say more. Fraternity, he says, is the basis of liberty, equality, the basis of social democracy, therefore. And fraternity, a better term for that is the Buddha's term maitri. Now, these three, as Buddhist principles, are not just matters of mere understanding. They're actual practices. We have to work on cultivating freedom of mind. We have to work on developing ourselves so that we have the strength to improve society and develop equality. We have to work on cultivating universal loving kindness, metta, fraternity. And at this time of terrible dukkha that all of us are facing, these practices are more important than ever. They'll help us work with the personal dukkha of fear and anxiety and other suffering. They'll help us to work with the dukkha that we see everywhere in society. In other words, we can say we develop shila, we develop our behavior and speech. We don't do things that we will regret later on. We speak and behave in such a way that contributes to social harmony. We develop our minds, and we can develop our minds especially through meditation, especially through developing awareness, through the mindfulness of breathing, and through the metta bhavana, the cultivation of universal loving kindness. I know that some of you might like to learn meditation if you haven't already, and if you're interested, I'm sure I could arrange someone experienced to teach through Zoom. And then thirdly, we develop our understanding, we develop our prajna through reading Buddha and his Dhamma and through studying other Buddhist literature. But this is not enough. These empower us to help others. And it's this empowerment to help others which is the real meaning of the paramitas. Now you might remember the paramitas. Babasahe mentions them in the 22 vows and in the Buddha and his Dhamma. They're the practices of the would-be bodhisattva, the one who tries to become a bodhisattva in their life. The bodhisattva is one who is dedicated to the uplift of all, the welfare of all, not just themselves. We call Babasahe a bodhisattva. Babasahe asked us to practice the paramitas. He wanted us all to become bodhisattvas. He wanted us all to practice the Dhamma, not just for ourselves, but also to help others. I'm going to leave you with two images of two statues at Nagaloka in Nagpur. They can inspire all of us at this time. The first is of Dr. Babasahe Ambedkar, who resolutely, determinedly, but deeply peacefully leading the great mass conversion in 1956, the culmination of his great life, one of the greatest lives in history. And the second is of his favorite image of the Buddha, not sitting as we usually see the Buddha, but walking out to help all beings in fearless gesture. We cannot stop the coronavirus, but inspired by Babasahe, empowered through the Dhamma, we can do so much to help ourselves and help others at this most difficult of times. I wish you all the very, very, very best through these times. Namo Buddhaya, Jai Bhim.